Thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the opportunity to share. You know, when I was starting out, when I was really young, too many years ago, I was fortunate enough to be around good mentors and people who shared back in a time when it wasn't a very large photo community. And I come from a photojournalism background. So back then, a lot of people didn't share. It was very competitive. In fact, if you'd go to, let's say, a playoff game, and you're trying to mark your spot on the floor, you'd leave your camera there. Someone may go and put some nose grease across the front of the lens, right? It was not uncommon. Someone may pop open the back of your camera because it was very competitive. And if you're shooting against the wire services who were there, AP, UPI, Reuters at that time, there were many, sure, they'd want to get the front page of the paper. So I learned early on, you know, you have to know who you could trust, and not everybody would readily share as we can today. So many people share so much information and knowledge, it's outstanding. You could get a great education just by looking at YouTube and things online. But the difference is coming together in a community, you now have people that you could connect with instead of looking at everything online. And then you have someone that you can go to and say, hey, can you help me out on this? Can you shoot with me? And you can learn together. So that's what I'm definitely all about, raising the level of the craft. Yes, I do have a new book out. If you want to take a look at it, I'll pass it around. It's all about engagement sessions. I'll just pass it around. And that's what I'm going to focus on, engagement sessions and light. And this is also what we do with engagement sessions. So this is a fine art. We use Graphy Studio. All books are really great book companies. It's just finding a company to work with that you can have a relationship with. But Dawn is the designer. She designed that book. And what we do is we take their engagement sessions, and I take a storytelling approach to it. There isn't a formula for anything I do when I photograph it. I want to go in, I want to listen to the couple, I want to learn about them so that the pictures are about them, not about me, and that I have to get this great portfolio shot. Wouldn't it be cool if I had a picture of them jumping off of a park bench with the skyline behind them? Sure, that would be cool for me, but is that cool for them? So my goal from early on, and Dawn's goal with our work, is to let the pictures truly reflect who they are and their energy back to them. All of our engagement sessions are different because they're unique to the couple. The one commonality, though, is light. Right? We can't practice our craft without light. And a lot of times the light isn't great when I have to shoot. So again, from my photojournalism days, it forced me to learn to think on my feet. If we had to do a portrait of somebody in here, we have overhead lighting, it's crappy. Sure, the cameras today can take the picture, without a doubt, but it's not good light, it's not flattering. And that's what we're hired to do, right? And tell the story. So I'm going to go through a lot of the images that are in the Engaged book. I'll share with you lighting diagrams, metadata, and I'll share with the approach I took. Like this book that's being passed around. The groom was very shy. He didn't really want to be photographed. He was dreading it. So when we were talking to him in their initial meeting, the consultation, the bride, she's very attractive. She loves clothes. She loves fashion. She's very outgoing. She couldn't wait to get her pictures taken. He was very nervous, and you could really see it when we were meeting with him. So I engage him, and I said, well, what do you do? Where do you work? And he's very proud. He's a trader at the Board of Trade, you know, down in the pit, wears the colored jacket, the slips of paper, all that. And I'm like, hey, why don't we start at the Board of Trade? You guys could play trading. We could go in there after hours. He's like, we could do that? I'm like, sure, why not? So we did that. That got him engaged. And then afterwards, he's like, wow, I'd really love to go to the Starbucks where we first met, where I saw her. I'm like, okay, cool. And then he's like, can we stop? I want to get a drink. I'm a little nervous. So he went and had some chili, a shot and a beer, and then he started thinking, he's like, I'd really love to go play at the beach. And all the time, Lauren is lighting up because she knew once you got him engaged, he would be on board. So I do that quite often, try and find how to get a common connection with usually the guy, because most girls are into it. And then we go from there. You tell their story, you let them lead you, you suggest things, and then you get the best possible picture you can. In the book that's going around, we ran out of light, rain rolled in, right? But that didn't stop me. I mean, all of the pro level gear, I happen to shoot all Canon equipment, is water resistant. Even the 600 XRTs or the 580s, 580X2s, they're all water resistant. So you could shoot in the rain and they're going to be just fine. Now if you use adapter radio triggers, you need to get that flash off camera, so you need a way to communicate with it. Many radio triggers are not water resistant. So in that case, put them in a plastic bag, do something to shield them. All right? So at any point in time, if you have any questions, feel free, because I'm sure if you're thinking it, someone else is. So I'll jump in and we'll go through a lot of these images. And as I said, I'm going to focus on engagement sessions. So I'm just going to make it, I'll flip back and forth between Lightroom and Photo Mechanic, only because in Lightroom I have the lighting diagrams, but in Photo Mechanic I could pull up all the metadata. Right. So it doesn't really matter for me if it's about natural light or light you have to create. Let me just hide, I don't need to see the toolbar. So it's all basically about light. So I don't care if I have to use a reflector, I don't care if I have to use a flashlight. In fact, oftentimes I've presented at WPPI, the last presentation I was there, everybody's like, oh, it's good for you. You've got a gazillion speed lights, you're a Canon Explorer of Light, they'll give you all the equipment you want to use. I'm like, yeah, that's true, but I've worked to get here. Like, yeah, I can't afford that. And I said, all right, let's go to Home Depot, $100. And I could light just as well as anybody with all their studio light, right? So I actually created a tutorial on that. Here, I'll show you some of the images. And it's just, I kind of call it dirty light, because light is light. So all these images are created with hardware store lighting, okay? There's my garment rack of light. So it's 3 $10 fluorescents around one of those collapsible garment racks that you can get at Bed Bath & Beyond and any place like that. Yep, there you go. And this is great because you could shoot through it, you could roll it around, right? And it's really down and dirty. You get a little fog machine after Halloween from those Halloween stores, $20, right? And then you start playing with color balance. And this is all shot with hardware store lighting. So don't give me an excuse that you can't afford speed lights. If you can't, do this. I mean, I've used this garment rack light on boudoir sessions, and it's just really gorgeous light. It's soft, it wraps around. So I use all types of lighting techniques, anything you may want to do to get the image.
Excuse me, that garment light that you set up just now, that emulates what? Like a softbox or what? What is that?
Well, it depends how you use it. So off to the side, it could be a hard light, and you could create a harder shadow. You turn one light on, one light off, and you could really start feathering it and controlling it. But it is, all three of them together, a very nice, soft light. And it creates these unique catch lights in the eye as well. But because you have 2, 4, 6 tubes in there, it really wraps around very soft, right? But just amazing, beautiful. Now, had I thought about it, I could have got a fourth one, put it across the bottom to close the box, so to speak. And if you really want to get technical with it, you could get the fancier fluorescents. They have an on and off switch, so you could start feathering the lights instead of plugging them in, unplugging them. I wanted to go as cheap as you could, right, to prove that nothing against professional photo level gear, but people were basically saying to me, I can't afford it, so I can't light. Bullshit. Seriously, light is light. And if you want to learn lighting, you could use anything to light. You can't use an excuse that I can't afford a 600 EXRT. Well, you may not be able to afford it today, but tomorrow you will. And you need to understand where to place that light, how to shape that light, how to control the light. Doesn't matter if it's coming from a 600 EXRT, a Vivitar, a B1, a D1, a fluorescent light. Light is light. When I got over that hump, it made a huge difference for me that, oh, that's flash, that's daylight, and they were in different compartments, when in reality it's all light. And when you mix them and you pull them all together and use them in that fashion, then your images can really sing. Then you could look at a scene and say, wow, sunlight's doing this and sunlight's coming from there. Maybe I need a reflector to fill in the shadows. Maybe I need a light to add to it for some backlighting. Because digital is a lot like Chrome's color slide film. I don't know how many people in here have shot film, but the exposure latitude is very narrow, okay? So if you don't have information in the shadows and you use software to open it up, you're going to create noise. I shoot all the time at 6400 ISO and my images look great. Reason being is I light for the shadows. I make sure there's detail in the shadows without blowing out the highlights. Sometimes you have to control that. Because if you just say, I'm going to shoot 6400 ISO and I'm going to shoot all available light, well, if you're exposing for the shadows, your highlights are going to be way whacked out, 2 stops over, and it's going to be a lot of Photoshop work to control them and pull them back, right? But if you expose properly, you're going to get a good image. And I would also suggest, if you're going to shoot at crazy high ISOs, I'd say anything above 2500, go back to the native software. Do your edit and your cull. If you're using Nikon, go to Nikon Capture. If you're using Canon, go to DPP. Everything else is just an interpretation of the raw decode. And where that really comes to play, where you're really going to see this, is when you start pushing the ISOs, right? And so when you get really high up there in ISO range, then you want to go back and get the actual raw converter that is not guessing at anything. And your images are going to be so much better. Now, their software is very clunky. That's why nobody really uses it. What I'm saying is do your call and edit in whatever software you choose, Photomechanic, Lightroom, anything. But then take those few signature images that you may have shot at a higher ISO that are going to be in the book or on your blog or on your website. Process them, just the raw decode, send it back to Lightroom as a TIFF, and you're going to have a much, much, much better image. Okay? Because Lightroom is just taking its best guess at the raw decode. And many times it does a good job. But I found at the higher ISOs, especially in the shadow areas, or even pulling back highlights, it doesn't always do as good a job. I've shot some images recently of the moon, and I posted them, you know, just online. And I was shooting at crazy high ISO because I was using a 2000 millimeter lens. I was using an 800 with a 2x on a Mark IV. So it ends up being like a 2100 millimeter lens. So you want to shoot at 2,000th of a second shutter speed. Just because of the atmosphere and the distance, any kind of motion gets magnified. So that gives you an f/16 lens, its maximum aperture. You need a high ISO. I did them side by side, one in Lightroom and one in DPP. There was a huge difference in noise and sharpness and everything else. You know, again, because I was up at 6400, no, I think I was at 8000 ISO. So it's something to look into. Right? And I've been lobbying to Canon for a long time to make DPP a plugin. There's no reason they can't. Their software is clunky, it crashes. If you're going to try and do any type of volume, it just is not convenient. But they very easily can make it a plugin for Photoshop and Lightroom. You know, so if enough people get on that bandwagon and ask for it, they'll listen because they want their files to look great. They don't want you to be posting images from a 1DX or 5D Mark III at 6000 ISO and saying, there's noise, right? When you guys shot film at 3200, that was noise, okay? This is not. This is nothing. This is totally tolerable, right? And get into the proper perspective of viewing distance. We're so used to looking at the monitor this far away that sure, you're gonna see noise. It's texture. But when you make a print and put it on the wall, proper viewing distance, that goes away, right? And it adds to the image. All right. Back to engagement sessions. So couples, let them tell the story, ask them to do things. I'm not above directing them in a fashion to where you can elicit a real emotion, okay? This was one of their favorite paintings. So again, the guy, he didn't know what to do. So I asked her, you know, go up to him, whisper in his ear, tell him something naughty, and then just lead him away. And sure, now he gets a little smirk, where before he was just standing there. And I'm like, really, if I wasn't here, you're just gonna stand there with this blank look on your face, just holding your fiance's hand, you know? So you gotta try and communicate with people. And definitely waited until the gallery cleared. It's a famous painting, and you have to have patience, and you have to wait for things. Art Institute's not going to let you bring in an artificial light source. They'll let you bring in a flashlight, because I've done that, to put a little spotlight on people's faces. But you're not going to bring a flash in, right?
Excuse me.
Yes.
How'd you even get permission to even clear that image for your portfolio?
So with the Art Institute, you can go in there and photograph all you want, as long as you don't have a tripod or a light stand and you purchase a ticket. They'll tell you what galleries are off limits that have copyright or limitations to reproduction, and they will be designated as such. But pretty much 90% of the Art Institute is fair game.
If they own the picture, you're allowed to photograph it.
Well, I know that part. I used to work there, but they were, even when I was working there, they were really stringent about
It depends on the exhibit. This image, this painting is so commonly reproduced and everywhere we'll say it's almost public domain. So that's why there's no issue to photograph in this gallery. Right? Sometimes in the modern wing, if you're there, they may have a special exhibit where the collection, they don't want any photographs taken of. And they'll tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll let you know.
Yeah, security is happening.
Yeah, well, all you got to do is be nice when you walk in, you buy a ticket, say, hey, I've got this couple, we're going to do an engagement session. Is there anything off limits?
Now, do you pay full price when you buy your ticket?
Sure you do. There's no discount.
Well, it's a suggested price as well, so
Oh,
unless they change the rules.
I don't know. I've always just paid full price.
Okay.
Actually,
That's what I would do, and
Yeah.
just to kind of avoid any trouble.
exactly.
Being a member gives you free access.
It does.
all the time.
For two people.
Yep. Many of our couples are members. That's why they'll suggest the Art Institute. And that's another thing. Locations are a big deal. Is I don't try and dream up locations for people. Yes, I can make a decent photo pretty much anywhere. But if they're not emotionally invested in the space, it's just a picture. If they're somehow not only emotionally connected with each other, but then invested in the location, it makes it so much easier to get a good image of them. Right? So again, that comes out of the process of talking to the couple, listening, asking questions, finding out, hey, what locations, where did you meet? Do you have a favorite painting? Do you have a favorite park? You know, do you have a location? And you get a dialogue going and people will tell you. You just have to listen. You know, tough lighting scenario. Every camera meter is going to be fooled, right? And one of the greatest tools that were added to cameras is live view. I no longer chimp, meaning I don't take a test shot and review, none of those things. So if you use live view, right, get it into manual mode, take it out of, pick my ISO, right, and as you're making your adjustments, they're happening live. So you can see them live. Not only that, but you could pull up the info, and you could actually pull up a color histogram. So you could dial in your color perfectly at exposure, right? So if I'm looking in here, right now it's in auto white, but if I got out of auto white and I went to Kelvin, pain in the butt to move this thing. So if I go to Kelvin, and then I change the white balance, you'll see it getting cold, see it getting warm, and then when I tap it, I go back. And what I'm looking for is to get that histogram back to near equal values. See if you look down here. So the image is a little bit warm, which are these lights here, and the histogram is telling me that. So not only do I dial in my exposure using live view, I dial in my color. And I'm good to go. So I'm not sitting there shooting and checking, shooting and checking, shooting and checking. That's annoying for the subject, right? When I start shooting, I take my test shot as we arrive at the scene and I get everything dialed in. Then I'm engaging, I'm shooting, I'm constantly interacting with them. I challenge you all to turn off the auto review. So you have to physically stop and make it review. In fact, try going for an entire day without checking your LCD, but use live view. Meaning I'm going to dial it in, I'm going to learn what color is, I'm going to learn to see light, and then I'm going to shoot. Because that's the way it used to be. And you're going to be far more connected with your subjects, and they're going to be connected with you. Because the minute you start doing this, what do?
I think their nails.
Yep, they do this. And the minute they start going here, you kind of lost them. You've lost that connection. You've lost that momentum, right? And I want to stay invested in one another. So I try to never chimp once we get the shoot going and keep that energy alive. So live view is a great tool. The technology today is amazing. It used to be, you'd have to grab a roll of tungsten film, a roll of black and white film, a roll of color negative film, and then you'd pull them out and change them accordingly. Now you have every conceivable film in your camera. Picture styles relate to film emulsions. So if you like Fujichrome or you kind of like Kodachrome, you can adjust your in-camera picture styles to give you that look. And even though you may be shooting RAW, the RAW decodes are beginning to read that information and reference it back to how it decodes the image. So the image you see on the back of your camera is the JPEG preview. It is not the RAW file. So if you nail the JPEG file, the RAW file is just that much better. And I don't use RAW as a crutch. Use RAW for the dynamic range, right? You should be going for color and exposure and emotion all at the same time. And it's a lot to pull into one thing, because all the squirrels are running here in one direction and you're verbally communicating another message and engaging with the couple. Sometimes I get because I'm thinking of all this color, exposure, and all that while still trying to remain present with them. You guys have a sweet deal going. Yeah, your husband can do all the technical stuff, hand it to you, and hi, and yeah, keep on going, right? I've used this image quite a bit in presentations, only because it really hits home for me, point of view, and listening again to the couple. The groom told me when we first met that they worked in the same building, and the first time he saw her and he wanted to ask her out was when they shared a cab. They caught a cab outside the building. So I thought, cool, let's work that into their engagement session. And he was like, really, I don't want a picture of us just sitting in the cab or just standing next to a cab. I'm like, trust me. So I took the camera, I mounted it on the back of the taxi cab using a Delkin Fat Gecko. I'm in the front seat with a pocket wizard to fire the camera. The camera was the 5D on the back. The groom is actually holding a speed light with a light sphere on it.
Nice.
And this is before 600, so it was radio poppers. And I have the STE2 speed light communicator on the camera, which has a radio popper transmitter on it. So as we drove around the city, I would randomly trigger the camera, right?
So you were in motion?
Yeah. How did they do it for the movies? Right? I want to get it in camera. I'm not a big post-production and effects person. I'm old school. I grew up shooting film and at a newspaper where you had to get it as the capture. I think there's a difference between digital art and photography. And I wish in a lot of competitions we could separate the two. WPPI went to it last year, creating a category for what you capture in camera and then digital artistry, right? Because they are two art forms, but you can't compete. There's this very wonderful image that a colleague of mine took that when I saw it, I said, holy shit, you have a horseshoe up your ass, you better play the lotto. It's a couple in a meadow, storm clouds above, farmhouse in the distance, and lightning is striking the farmhouse. And they're embracing. And I'm thinking, everything aligned for this guy, right? Only to my dismay, the sky is from somewhere else, the lightning strike was created. Sure, he did photograph the couple in a field. The farmhouse was even put there. I'm like, really? How do you compete with that with a straightforward image? Right? You can't. And I've been lobbying for 2 different categories as such.
I agree.
Because you just can't compete with what could be digitally created. I saw some very cool landscape shots, I'm digressing now, from Venice. And it was this cool chapel and a canal and the sky and everything. And I'm like, man, I've been to Venice enough times. I know that chapel is not on a canal. And then after further investigation, I found out that it was all composited together, right? Nothing wrong with that. Just say it as such. Don't pass it off as a straightforward image. That's my preaching. That's my issue. Little backlighting. I try and light for the practical, no matter what I'm doing. Meaning, I'm not trying to be overly obvious. I'm not David LaChapelle, where the light is crazy cool and that takes on a different language with the image. I'm trying to give you the perception that the marquee is really backlighting them, and it's not. And there's a front fill flash here, because if you totally just backlit them, there would be no detail in their faces at all. But you could really learn to get images like this quickly. I mean, you grab a small light stand, pop it in the middle of State Street. Backlight I generally always have in manual mode, right around 1/4 power, because it's predictable. With ETTL, any automatic type of flash, when you shoot into that light, if the camera and the speed light communicate as it's too bright, it's going to shut everything down exposure-wise. But if you mix ETTL and manual, then it just treats it as a constant light source. So it's always going to be that value, and then the front light will follow along accordingly. Right? And I manually manipulate ETTL all the time by using flash exposure compensation.
Hey, Bob, I got just a question for you.
Yeah.
Where did you park? Like, how do you shoot there? Because it is like the craziest traffic scene. And there's no parking. Were you guys blocks away and walked over there?
Sure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we walked from the Art Institute over to State Street. Yeah. You just park and walk around.
You take an assistant to watch, your background, because I know that street, and it's pretty wide. You can shoot there.
You can. There's
You
a
have lot
wide
of
open
access.
in the middle.
But do you have somebody kind of watching out for you as cars?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. The first time I started having an assistant was when my son became old enough to assist me. So, no, for many of these images, there's no assistant at all.
Labor.
Yeah, very, very, very cheap labor. But yeah. Same thing. The couple loved the scooter, and here I had an assistant with me. I opened up the back of the car, I sat in the back, and we drove. And that's blurred in camera. That's not blurred post. Sure, you could do this post, but that's just not my style, my makeup, right? So you shot it slow while you're moving, and you let this motion blur, right? Detail shots, I mean, women love shoes, right? And it becomes part of the story. You get to know after a while the red bottoms, Christian Louboutins, they're really expensive. I know more about women's shoes now than I ever thought I would.
Just don't start wearing them and you're okay.
Yeah, oh man, they're expensive. But they love them. So I thought, well, let's get a detail shot, clean up the background. I just dropped a medium Apollo softbox in the hallway behind him and just blew out the background, right? Really simple. The walls were white, so you have enough bounce back to reflect. Now that wouldn't happen if you were trying to do it ETTL, because you'd be chasing your tail. As you're trying to make it brighter, the camera's saying, oh, hey, dummy, that's too bright. I'm going to turn it down. I'm going to turn it down. You have to go manual, right? And there's times when you know your equipment and you know the result you see. I always see an image here first. I'm not running around trying to find an image. It just makes it more challenging to do that, right? Any thoughts, questions? No? Good?
In that confined space there, I can imagine with 3 sides in that hallway, is there a wall, camera right, that's creating a reflection of the legs there? Because that...
It's a narrow hallway.
Yeah, along with the green and the red,
White walls, it's a duck in a barrel to me. It's white walls,
exactly.
boom.
So,
Light's going to wrap
I think
around.
That's what makes the shot too, because, highlighting her legs and her emotion through the shoes, is killer,
Thank you. These are kind of out of sequence. They're in file name. Let me put them in capture time. There we go. Yeah, so they're a little out of sequence. So there, your nice portrait of them, right? Here again is the same hallway, same lighting technique, only up top, and then drop down and get the detail shot of her shoes. Same one light, medium softbox, just boomed it up, had it up overhead. And this you could shoot ETTL all day long. And then you can manipulate it through flash exposure compensation if it's reading too much light, not enough light. So if something is a white background, you need more light from the speed light. So you need to tell the flash, give me more. So you could do that either shooting manual or taking flash exposure compensation up. If you're photographing a bunch of groomsmen or people in dark clothing, you want the blacks to stay black and you want to underexpose. So take flash exposure compensation down so your blacks remain black and not gray. Because the camera and the meter and the speed light, they're all communicating to give you neutral, which is 18% gray, right?
Well,
So once you know that.
I'm sorry, for this shot, are you encouraging the bride to look up?
Oh yeah, definitely, because the light's overhead.
Right,
Totally.
right. So you're conscious to encourage her to look up?
Because if she's looking straight at me, I wanted the boomed up, I wanted the highlight on her.
Right, right.
So the light's just like this, overhead, exactly, and it's off. But if I'm looking straight at you, we get raccoon eyes.
Right.
That wasn't the image I had in mind. I wanted her laughing and looking up, highlighting her, and then the light coming down, right? Just a different look. Instead of everything looking flat, front lighting, you could get into a rut and into a habit. So I try and change things up on every shoot. Sure, there's certain go-to elements you can go to every shoot and they're going to work. But then all of your work will look the same, you know.
Your book looks flat.
Not just that, I try and let each shoot have its own life. And the couple to kind of dictate the character of the lighting I'm going to do, right? Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's soft, sometimes it's small light modifiers, sometimes it's larger, right? All depends on what we have and what we're going to do. You know, she was a New York fan, he was an LA fan, so they had the two different ball caps. I'm saying, oh, I got this picture in my mind, like you guys are secretly in love and your friends and everybody hate each team, so we kind of caught you in the act, in the alley, so here's the spotlight. So here you just shoot wide, you get the flash a little bit off camera, and you manually zoom the flash head. Instead of it matching the focal length of the lens, you're making it a grid spot. Yeah. So you could just manually zoom the flash head to 105. Boom. Get the nice curvature. So without adding a snoot or a grid, anything like that, you get this fall off edge that's not perfectly circular and sharp. If you use a light shaper, you're going to get a much more defined shape of light. Okay? I would have used it, but I didn't have a grid with me. You know, it's one of those things where you're walking around.
I mean, that's the beauty of the speed light. It comes pre-shaped.
Sure, but if you really wanted to have that noir spotlight caught in the act look, it would be nice to have the circle and a more defined edge, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, you could go in and burn it down more, but, you know, try and keep post-production as minimal as possible. Every one of these images have been touched. They're not straight out of camera. These are portfolio images. These are the images that are in the book. Dawn has gone through and she cleans up cigarette butts on the ground. She makes sure that the bride is flawless, meaning if she needs a little liquefy here because she was looking down, you know, and she knows how women like to look, she'll correct that. Any skin softening, anything like that, that's all been done, right? If he has, most guys, a lot of guys get razor burn on the neck. That's gone. Now, we don't do that for the entire take. We only do that for the signature images or what may be on the blog, right? We'll call them portfolio finished images. But again, just trying to get a little bit about this couple. They like to travel. They like going to the beach. You know, so if you poke around on our website, all the engagement sessions are different. Some photographers' websites that I visit, it's just the faces change, but the shoot is the same for everybody. The look is the same, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But that's not my background. My background was a journalist, and so you got to come up with something different every time. And that's what I strive for. And again, I think it's been good for our brand because the images reflect the people, not the photography, right? Just using a reflector. Didn't need to put any separation light in the background because you're shooting against brightly lit fall color leaves, and then just using a reflector to reflect it back into them. She's got nice sunlight backlighting, right? So you don't need to light everything, but you need to modify it. Had I just took this image, totally available light, the background would be completely gone because they're sitting in open shade. I try and keep people, I try and work smarter, not harder. Whenever I usually do a lighting demo or anything like that, people say, I want to shoot at the beach, I want to use speed lights, and I want to do it at high noon, and you know, how do I make this work? I'm like, well, bang, bang, bang. Really? We could put a scrim over them, just a white sheet even, and then light them, and it's going to be so much easier on them. People with light eyes are going to be like, the light's killing me, right? Why do photographers always want to work harder? I always look for the easiest solution. I put them in, she's got blue eyes, I put her in the open shade, she can look at me all day long. Fill a little light back in on her, work smarter, not harder. Now, if you have to, and that's the absolutely only space you have to work in, sure, I can make something work, right? You have to, that's what we're getting paid for. But if you have an option and a choice, make it easy on your subjects. They're going to give you a better emotion, better reaction, all the way around. You know? It was fun. It was fun. They're a fun couple. Very fun couple. This was one of those challenges. Someone had said to me, well, you got to shoot, you know, the 645 context at f2 and it's got to be film. And here's what it's going to look like. I'm like, okay, let me understand this. You're shooting film. But you're sending it out and you're scanning it. And then you're going to process it all digitally. Doesn't work for me. If you're going to shoot film, make a frickin' wet print. Shoot film for what it was meant for. If you're going to shoot film, this is now again me just preaching, and you're going to turn it to a digital file, and you're going to bring it into a computer, and you're going to post-production everything digitally. Why? When you could create that same look in camera, right? I don't understand that. So if somebody could help me understand that, I'll buy the fact that if you're going to shoot film, make prints. Show them contact sheets. Make a frickin' print. Don't scan it and then don't process it in Photoshop and then print from Photoshop, because now we're right back to digital and you can emulate any film look you want without the hassle of cataloging film and dust and scanning. I don't know.
I would say if you use a medium format, it's just cheaper than buying a phase 1 250.
But why would you even need to do medium format? So if you send your film to Roberts, 120 film, and you get it scanned, you're only going to get a 20 megabyte file back.
Well, it may be fine for some people that's looking for a specific look, maybe their depth of field.
It's not commercial, right? So here's an 85 1 or a 50 1.2. You know, what is it, a 50?
24.
24, is it? I can't see the metadata without my glasses. 24, 1.4. Yeah, shooting at 2.8. Yep. Where's my lens? Yeah. So, yeah, you could totally gather that look. And the only thing that I'm trying to understand is if you're going to shoot film, why are you shooting film, right? That's my, and I've got nothing against. I've shot a ton of film. In fact, I still have a speed graphic 4x5, and when I can, for certain things, I'll shoot type 55, right? Polaroid type 55, where you get a positive and a negative. And then I'll make a print from that negative, and it's cool. I would not dream of thinking, oh, well, I could take that negative and I could scan. Why? When all I got to do is buy some edge program, and I could do a little tilt shift manipulation in Photoshop to emulate that look if I'm going to bring it all back digital. You know what I mean? I don't know, I'm just trying to figure that one out. So again, getting back to couples, engagement sessions, telling the story. That's the Flatiron Building. So this is what, Damon, Lincoln, all that. And this is lit, right? So I had one speed light off camera right, up high with a snoot to light their faces. And I had a second one right about here on a light stand. And then I was down the street a little bit with a 200 millimeter lens, 70 to 200, you know, and I was down on my knee, one knee, it's at 70. And I was shooting at 1/8 of a second. So with IS, if you're down low and you brace yourself on your knee, squeeze it off, boom. The reason I wanted the 1/8 of a second, because I wanted the people to be blurred.
How'd you make sure they stood still?
You ask them. You tell them, I'm going to shoot a really long exposure. Scott, Taylor's beautiful. I know you wouldn't mind being close and looking into her eyes.
Do you bring a pack of mints just in case?
What's that?
You bring a pack of mints just in case?
That's up to them. We just went for tacos before this. I really enjoy. I'll go out on a limb and say I love engagement sessions more than weddings.
I agree with you.
Only because you can take your time. You could stop and get a taco. You can have a conversation. You can pull off each other and be creative without the pressure and timeline and constraints of a wedding day.
Right.
To really produce on a wedding day is a challenge because you're slave to the schedule, right? And all the family and everybody else and things that need to be done, and you have to still be creative. Where, you know, our engagement sessions usually end up being 4 hours just because we take our time and just have fun. And if I like the couple, I don't mind being around them, right?
How long was your longest engagement session?
No, no. Probably about 6 hours.
You don't
It does.
fly to Paris and back?
Yeah, no, don't count that. But, you know, sometimes getting around from different locations, that adds up time.
I'm sure it helps you with the wedding day. They enjoy the engagement session. They know to give
Exactly.
you time.
As much as they can, but they're more, we'll say accommodating. They're very comfortable, they're accommodating. You've already had this rapport and spent this time together. So they know if I say to the groom, hey, you know, you could pinch your butt or you can whisper something, because what I'm trying to do is put them in a situation with a clean background to get a good image, to not look posed.
Yeah.
So then if you converse with them to elicit a real emotion, then you do get a true moment, even though you've put them in this alley, right? And Taylor, I mean, she's done singing and dancing and show stuff since grade school. So I didn't ask her to pose like that. She knows her body and she knows how she's gonna look good. She kicked the toe up and I'm like, oh, this is a piece of cake. I could photograph her all day long, right? Scott, you know, you just had to work with Scott, keep him engaged.
Excuse me, the previous picture you shot outside, right here,
Mhm.
were you by yourself or do you have staff with you?
No, I'll tell you when I have an assistant. This is me. I usually run around with a little backpack, 2 collapsible, small nano light stands, 3 speed lights, and a couple different light modifiers. And I could kind of whip things up and down in a heartbeat. So yeah, black and white color, doesn't matter. When I'm shooting in different scenarios, I try and filter my light to match. Doesn't matter what I'm shooting, because I like consistency in color. I don't embrace color shifts too much. So while the background is very reddish orange, my speed light is filtered for tungsten, and I'm shooting in a tungsten white balance. But sodium mercury vapor lights have their own color temperature. They're not on the Kelvin scale. So you almost have to do a custom white balance for them, but then I couldn't balance my light. So you just try and get in the ballpark, at least I do. And then again, you see this information in your camera as well, right? So if you get it right at the point of capture, your point of output is going to be that much better versus having to manipulate the file, open up the shadows, things of that nature. You know, you may notice a lot of times I'm shooting higher ISO, 1250, and slow shutter speeds. So one of the basic foundations of exposure and lighting is aperture is equal to the flash output. How much light you're asking, whatever light source you're using, a B1, a D1, whatever. That aperture is the amount of light that speed light or flash or light source is going to have to generate. The shutter speed is how much ambient light I pull in from the scene. And I usually try and keep a 2-stop separation, no matter what I'm shooting, just because it gives you depth. If your light that you're lighting,
The ambient light, 2-stop?
lower, right? So you have depth and separation. If they become equal, then your image again is flat, because all your light is even and flat, right?
Hey, Bob,
Yeah.
so the orange light,
Mm-hmm.
is that, I thought you lit that, like here.
Nope.
That's not a speed light going off in the background?
No, that is one of those telephone pole lights way in the back. You could see right where my light is because it gives itself away by the flare on the ground, right? And I purposely wanted flare on the ground. I wanted that long shadow coming forward toward me. Oh, no. Yeah, so that's the street light gives off that kind of light.
For doing live demonstration shooting or?
I'm sorry?
At Photo World, will you be doing live demonstration
Mhm.
shooting?
I will.
Worth the price of admission?
I will.
Shoot
Yeah, that's going to be a little bit different, and I'm going to talk about the approach of more lights versus more light. Like I've gone to several weddings, I've crashed other photographers' events and given hats off credit that they're lighting things, okay? I was testing the 1DX and the 600s way before they came out. So I'm at the Ritz-Carlton, it's January, I got to give a write-up to Canon and get the camera back. I get it on a Thursday and I got to get it back Monday because they're really trying to get the firmware nailed down for release. So they said, can you shoot something? I said, I could shoot something, but I want to shoot something worthwhile. So I found a wedding at the Ritz-Carlton, and I crashed it. I asked the bride and groom, I asked the photographer first, everybody said, yeah, cool. And hats off to the guy. He had alien bees in 3 corners on umbrellas. Cool. He's shooting everything at 400 ISO at 5.6. When he fires, you kind of felt a woof in the room. Okay? While that's great that he's lighting, for me it's distracting. In fact, the dad, because I'm running around, I got lots of energy and I'm running around and I'm shooting stuff and I'm using my triangle of light. 3 little speed lights, the 600s on some small light sphere light modifiers pointed direct. So I'm shooting purposely because that camera, we were really pushing the ISO. It's 6400 ISO, but I'm shooting at 3.5. So the dad comes up to me because he sees me. I'm like, hey, you didn't hire me. He says, you got to stop with this light stuff, man. It's just so annoying because the place was very dimly lit. It had candles, it had subtle uplighting. It was very warm and romantic, subdued lighting. And every time he took a picture, I'm not kidding, you felt the woof. Right? That's a lot of light going off. While it's going to give a good image and you're going to have lots of things in focus, it became annoying. So I said, Dad, watch. I took a picture and he's like, okay, when's the light going to go off? I'm like, that's not me. That's the person you hired. So I felt bad because he went to the other photographer and said, hey, you got to take these things down. And they really were annoying. He could have done himself a favor by going direct and turn them down to a 30-second power, shoot at 800 ISO, shoot everything at 3.5, and it just would have been a wink, okay? You start bringing large light sources in, then it becomes about you, and you're distracting. You're taking away from the environment, okay? And I never want to become the focus of attention at an event. Sure, as photographers, if you set up a triangle of light and you start shooting, we're hypersensitive to a little flash going off. People aren't in the heat of an event, but they'll totally tune into that. That's a full moon in the corner of the room, right? There's a time and a place to use that kind of lighting, right? Lighting outside. I purposely did, I'm a backlightaholic, yes, I will admit it. I love backlight, okay? I like movies. I watch a lot of movies. A couple current TV shows, The Vampire Diaries and some of those other cool shows I watch with my daughter. They really get into lighting because they shoot a lot of things at night. Everything is backlit. And if you even notice like Grey's Anatomy, all the women have a hair light. None of the guys do. Right? They do because they want to look glamorous. They want to pop their beautiful hair off the background. And they give this little rim light like that. Okay, now, yes, Dawn has gone through and she has taken away all the flyaways because we don't have a makeup artist with us and she doesn't have perfectly coiffed hair. We're out in Central Park, so the wind is blowing and there's some flyaways, so she's retouched that out. But what I like is when it starts to rain, it starts to light up the raindrops and gives the image a little perspective. It pops them off the background. So front light is just ambient. Just one backlight. That's all it is. Right? So light is light, and it's mixing and pulling things in together. Right? I just happened to look at the ground and I saw the reflection, so I thought, oh, that's pretty cool.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Hey Bob, do you ever gel the backlight, to kind of match the sunlight, like with the 2 pictures back, a golden light would kind of just
Sure.
fall back a little bit, so it's just not so obvious?
Yes. I gel all the time. Sometimes for theatrical, for color, sometimes for color correction, sometimes to bring warmth. Again, I don't have a routine that I follow, other than, yes, I will backlight. Yep. And, you know, sure, this is Hallmark greeting cards. It's a little cheesy, but oh my God, they love this picture, right? They've referred me a lot of people because of this picture. They put it on their thank you note. You know, of course, what couple wouldn't love it, right? I like pretty much the straightforward one a lot better, but, you know, you did that and they're like, oh my God, you know? And that's what it's about, right? It's about our clients. It's not always about what we like, you know? Beautiful natural light. All of these are. And then, you know, you get a girl, they were engaged, and she really is a model. I had to keep asking her, Lauren, bring it down a bit here. You know, your fiance is just a fireman, you know, you're smoking him here. I feel like we're on a fashion shoot. You know, I mean, sure, it was a pleasure to shoot, but this was a couple lights going on. So we have window light coming from the left. Here I could go, and these are in the book. Crap. Here we go. So here's Lauren and her fiance. Great place to shoot. I love photographing. I just was doing a practice shoot with the B1s just for fun at the United Methodist Church in Gary, Indiana. They just filmed not just, but the last Transformers film. They did a battle scene inside there. So it's a wickedly cool place to photograph.
If you don't fall through the floor.
Yeah, if you don't die.
I almost went through a fire.
Yeah, you could. That place has been vacant for over 20 years, so it's pretty dangerous if you don't know what the heck you're doing. You got to be careful. But this is one speed light in an Apollo medium softbox. I had an assistant with me, and she would move the light around for me. But it's just blending, again, daylight coming in through the windows and the speed light in the softbox. If I'm not backlighting, then it's ETTL. So this was an ETTL image, right? This image, I just had my niece, Michelle, she was my assistant, boom, it actually hold it up on the light stand above. And again, same technique as the other couple, had Lauren look up, right? And if the couples are close enough together, the light's going to reflect off her face onto him. You know, a little bit forward, right? A lot of fun. So let me... Here's a recent engagement shoot that we did. Talking to the groom, I found out that he's a boxer. He likes to box. He's been boxing since grade school. So, you know, I took that idea and I ran with it. I'm seeing in my mind's eye, you know, Muhammad Ali standing over Sonny Liston, you know, all the flashes going off. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, there's going to be all these trainers in the gym. They'll be around the ring. I'll put a camera in their hands and I'll fire the flashes off my camera. Oh, it's going to be epic. You get to the gym and none of these guys want to have their picture taken, right? But this is lit with a triangle of light. It's 3 speed lights in the gym. Right? But I'm going for a natural look, so it doesn't really look lit. The telltale sign is look at the highlights in their eyes, right? And in the gym, there's no highlights that are going to be produced that way because it's all overhead lighting. Okay. So here's the gym. Here's one of my lights up on the light stand. And I had the 2 front lights behind me, one left, one right. And because I'm using the 600 EXRTs, you could put each light in an individual group and you have infinite control. You can put them in any mode, in any power output, in any configuration, and turn them on or off from camera. So I knew I was going to shoot towards my D light, the D light's in the background, so I turned it off right from camera for a picture. But when I wanted to do an overhead shot, why aren't you scrolling? There we go. This shot here, I had all 3 lights going on. So I mounted a camera above the ring, triggered it remotely, which is communicating with the speed lights down on the ground, creating those shadows, right? All using off-camera flash, nothing on camera. course, the shoes. These were Jimmy Choos. You know.
You know your shoes.
Are those flashes there? You have some sort
I do. It's a Gary Fong light sphere,
of lights there.
but shooting direct without the diffusion cap because it gives it nice spread,
So the lights
but not overly diffused.
pointing at them.
It is. It is direct. I like highlights. I like shadows. In fact, my camera is mounted right there above the ring. So as I'm shooting my camera here, I have a pocket wizard in the shoe that's firing the remote camera simultaneously. I used to shoot a lot of sports. So here was my idea. My daughter was my assistant, and I brought 3 extra cameras. I brought, 8 speed lights, because I was going to have these other boxing training guys looking in the ring over the rope, and I was going to fire them all, make it look like a cool shot, like he's knocked out by her love, right? Okay. Get that same. So my daughter was the only one that would volunteer to be there, but it worked.
Next time make a post, we'll show up.
Yeah,
Sure. But if you're going to shoot into your lights, you got to put them in manual mode, because if you shoot into any light being in any type of automatic mode, it's going to shut off. Okay? So and if you're going to slave a speed light on a camera, you have to turn the power to the camera off. Otherwise, it cannot be a remote slave. It'll think it's a master device. So the power in the camera's off. That's why I could fire them all. And then there's this cool stuff called canned haze. If you don't have the ability to lug a fog machine everywhere, it's fog in a can. And
Bill, you paying attention?
and you shoot. Canned haze.
Flash settings on those in the back.
Oh, those guys down there were probably a 30-second power.
But in order to get your stuff,
And then here you can see the cameras all going off. And the shadows are all created by the triangle of light. Yeah, so I mean, I got one guy to come in. Allie's holding 2 cameras. One guy came in and was like, really? Come on. But it worked. I mean, they loved it. Came wedding day, you're kind of like the hero. You walk around and the family and everybody is seeing the engagement photos. They had the guest book with the engagement photos. So whatever I wanted to do, they're like, oh yeah, did you see those engagement photos? Yeah, do whatever he wants. It really helps give you credibility. But I didn't just say, let's go to the boxing gym and take some cool photos. He's a boxer, so it's relative. She supports him. He still trains. He bought her the pink boxing gloves as a gift way back when. He tried to get her engaged and she never went. When I started saying, we'll go to the gym, she goes, I got pink boxing gloves. She didn't even have to go out and buy them. She did get the robe. That she did get for the event. But then, we went to a diner. And this is all lit with small modifiers. I'm not going to go in there with big modifiers. These are lit with Rogue flash benders and a grid. There is one light pointing at them from behind that's just popping them off the background. One light left, one light right. And there's no way to get that much detail in a detail shot unless you're shooting at f11 with a macro lens. Let's face it. There is 0 depth of field with a macro lens. So if you're shooting at 2.8, you're only getting the head of the diamond in focus, right? Even at f11, it still falls off right there, right? But lighting it really makes it sparkle, really pulls it out. Just creating some fun images, not relying on the light that's there. Take them outside. That's all just natural light.
It's cute.
Very fun. That's lit. Totally lit, right? They wanted to go to Union Station. Wanted to I try and ebb and flow with the images to lead you on a journey. Like we're going to have a scene setter. And then we're going to go in and get a detail shot. And then we're going to come in and get a tight portrait. And that's exactly what this is. So in the center, it's 1 speed light. Behind them, manual mode, just enough to draw attention to them. And then you just pick up 70 to 200 and shoot the same shot from across the street. One with a 16 to 35, one with a 70 to 200, right? Daylight in the front, 1 light in the back. Now, even this is lit, because when you're looking at him, he was kind of blending in with the gray of the column. So just putting a light outside the column, pointed back at them, just low enough power. For me, I see that immediately. When I'm looking at the scene, I'm like, this needs a little something. I'm not guessing. Yes?
What time of day did you do this? When there was no people at Union Station?
No, you wait. We met at the boxing gym at about 1. We were there till about 3:30, so it's about 3:45 we were here.
What, like on the weekend?
No. Weekday. You know, my daughter was my assistant. She had to get out of her comfort zone and actually had to hold people for a second. Yeah. But you could do it.
Photoshop was used in the process.
So this is nice. It's available light. It looks okay. But I'd rather this look with a little bit of rim light on them. Like this. You know, you'd think, oh, wow, there's sunlight coming through those columns and just kissing them from the side. And it's just a little accent light to give the image some flavor, right? Here's that canned haze inside. You spray it right in front of the light source. Look at movies. Look at American Idol. There's always haze in the air, right? They have those light cannons on American Idol, and before they fire them up, they go psst, and they put fog into the beam of light, so it gives you the light pattern, right? Cinematography really helps a lot.
It looks like film.
And if you do it right in front of the light source and it's close enough, you'll get that refraction. And it's a can of aerosol fog. And it'll hang in the air.
With your front element,
What's that?
does the haze collect on your front element? No.
It'll dissipate really quick. Yeah.
So can anyone go into Union Station and just shoot her?
Mm-hmm.
No one?
Yep.
Well, outside.
Yeah.
Inside you could be thrown out.
It's all inside. No permit. Walk right in. Shot. But I don't take forever. Got the shot, we move on. I got the shot, we move on. It's really quick. I'm not there long enough to draw attention.
So you're not going to use a 7-foot reflector inside?
No. One speed light, bare, on a small light stand that my daughter walked over, popped on. We did the shot, we moved on. I've practiced this so much, I know what I'm doing, that I could walk in and I could do that. But it takes practice. If I had to sit there and find my settings and find my composition and think about it, and all of a sudden people start watching you, and sure, I have never been kicked out of the Union Station. So this is a little reverse gelling going on here. So I lit the subjects with tungsten in a daylight situation so that they're a little bit warmer and the daylight goes a little cooler, right? Instead of balancing it, you know, just to make this look later than it was. So we pull down the ambient light, make it bluer for the perception that it's actually much later in the evening. So once you understand lighting and gelling, you could reverse gel. You know, it's very fun to do.
Is it like 2 stops under 12 your ambient?
Mm-hmm. It's about 2 stops under. I brought a pillow from Target, a feather pillow. You know, because she mentioned pillow fights. I said, why not? And yeah, no, they had fun. And I knew that would have to be the last shot because she had false eyelashes and all those feathers would get stuck and it would take forever to get them out.
Did you clean the feathers up afterwards?
Just right away.
They blew. Nope. They're feathers. There's a lot of seagulls there.
Everybody just assumes the bird flew up.
Yeah, no, it was fun.
I have a question for you.
Wait.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm deaf in one. Oh,
Right here.
Do you let your clients see the pictures as you're shooting?
once in a while.
Going in the right direction?
Sure. Once in a while. I don't show them every image. I'll show them 1 or 2. Want to get them excited. But I want their energy to be about them, not about thinking, how do I look? Because in my experience in the past, women more than men, once you start showing it, hey, can I see that? I want to have this. And then it becomes, you lose this momentum and energy about them trying to pose all the time and worried about how their hair is. And I'm like, don't worry about it. It's going to look great. Trust me. You know, so I never want to get into that scenario. I have a couple times. It's just really awkward. Like, can I see it? Can I? And it's every shot. Can I see it? Can I see it? You lose the momentum.
Have you had situations where they weren't pleased?
No, because I do my homework. I'm not asking them to do something that's outside their energy, right? So I've had weddings where there'd be no way I would have a pillow fight. No way. That's just not who they are, right? Their energy is different, so I wouldn't even suggest it. But had I not took the time to get to know them, to listen, to understand them a little bit, and make it about them and their needs and not mine and the pictures I want to get, then sure, you'll run into challenges. You definitely want to make this a collaboration. It just makes the whole process so much more pleasant for everybody. Their expectations are set correctly, mine are set correctly, you know. Yes?
What did you tell that person when they came to you? Like, can I see, can I see, can I see? How did you?
You're kind of stuck. You kind of have to. Because if all of a sudden you start saying no, she's going to interpret that that the images are bad. Oh, I can't show you that one. Why? Yeah, it just doesn't. Once you've gone down that hole and that person is in that zone, you kind of got to go with it. Hopefully they'll back up a little bit. But the 2 times it happened to me, they didn't. She wanted to see every scenario. And then when we would stop to go somewhere else, can I look at the camera while we're driving? Yeah, and if you, again, if you say, it's hard for me, if I say no, then all of a sudden they start thinking, oh, it's going wrong, they're bad, there's something wrong. And then, but then once they've seen too many images, they become overcritical of how they should be, and she's futzing, and she's doing this, and you know, and it just loses something for me. So I'll just get really excited, and I'll show them one really quick. Oh, you're gonna love this, and boom, that's it. And then we go. I don't let them study it. I don't zoom in for it. That's just me. So this is that couple, Alex and Chris. This is their wedding. You don't have to watch it, but what I wanted to share with you is how we preview our images, whether it's an engagement session or a wedding, to our couples. So we create a slideshow on our website. We put this watermark across it so that they don't screen capture it and make prints from it. And then they can see their images. And at the bottom is a link to our online hosting service, which is Pictage. So everything goes there. That's our lab, that's our back end for all of our customer service. But it's smarter to send them to your website instead of sending them directly to Pictage. Because they have all their friends and family go here first to see the images. And then from here, if they want to make a purchase, they go to Pictage. But in the meantime, they've already seen our brand. And it's another way of marketing yourself. And we booked more people because they're like, oh, I saw Alex and Chris's slideshow. I just love it. Because they went to our website and then they poked around. Right? Instead of sending them directly.
And these are highlights or all the images?
No, these are just highlights. Little highlights. Yeah, the details. Yeah, it's just a little highlight of their day. You know.
Are you licensing the music, like making a big song for each slideshow?
Yep, these are royalty free from Triple Scoop.
Does Pictage does that for you?
No. This is us. We do this. This is we use Show It for our website, so you could create client sites, and that's what this is. So it allows us to put each client gets a slideshow like this, and it's unique. They have their own, like it's bobanddawndavis.com/Alex and Chris, the couple's name.
But then if they click something, does it pull them into Pictage?
What's that?
If they click on an image, it pulls them into
Nope.
Pictage?
So down here at the bottom it says click here to view the images of Chris's wedding, and if you click there it hyperlinks it, takes them right to Pictage. And you sign in, create your user. But in the meantime, everybody is at our site poking around and looking at the pictures. Right? And same technique. I mean, lighting. I mean, the Standard Club, if anybody's ever shot a wedding at the Standard Club, it's a cave. It's one of those old money clubs that is just a cave. It's super dark. You know, and I want the images to sing. They have depth, dimension. So I'll light it.
So your flash is not on your camera or if it's off, that's like TTL? Your triangle?
So,
The light that you will use to light them?
sure.
Are you using that on the TTL mode or manually?
90% of all my front lighting is ETTL. Any backlighting, of course, is going to be manual just because it makes it quicker and easier to find your way there. One of the other things I wanted to share with you is there are limitations to the 600 EXRT. I have a backup for a backup because I never want to arrive somewhere and say, oh, I can't get the picture because technology's not working, okay? These images here are shot from across the street, outside the Standard Club. The Standard Club's an old building, so it has load-bearing walls, meaning the wall is over 3 feet thick. The 600 EXRTs operate on Wi-Fi, and the most common frequency of Wi-Fi, 2.4 gigahertz. They may or may not penetrate that wall from across the street, and they may or may not be consistent in firing. I know this because I've tested them, I've played with them, and I know that. So these are radio popper nanos. It's just a straight up dumb trigger to fire the lights manually inside, no problem every time, okay? So I knew that was going to be the case. I went across the street. This is shot with a 300, you know, a 24 to 70 and a 70 to 200, and one last one with some canned haze, right? So again, I'm trying to tie everything and make it consistent from their engagement shoot through the wedding. But it's also knowing your gear, knowing when technology will work, what its limitations are, and how to get around it. More and more things are on 2.4 gigahertz. I was just at a wedding last weekend in New Orleans. We were shooting the details in the banquet room. Everything worked great. Band comes in, sets up, go to, you know, take a few test shots once the band is all wired up because I know about frequencies and stuff. Everything was inconsistent. I couldn't get a link to stay connected between the master and all the speed lights. And it's because they fired up their own router and all their mics were on 2.4. You go over to their control booth and you could see what they're transmitting. I'm like, oh shit. So I went to all nanos. So I could still have my off-camera lighting. They're manual mode. I don't care if it's manual or ETTL, I could still work. But I didn't want to have happen is like, oh boy, I can't use my off-camera lighting because technology is not cooperating with me. I have to go to an on-camera bounce flash. No. You know, no. I'm hired for a certain look, for a certain image style. And if I shot that entire wedding with one on-camera bounce flash, they'd be like, something doesn't look the same as all the other weddings I saw. They don't know what it is, but they'll know something is different. So you can't let technology get in your way. Exploit it, understand it, and have a backup, right?
I got a question, and it's about homework. So with this image, you know, you're in the standard room, you know, you're setting up, but you don't say, let me run across the street and go take a picture of this through the window.
Sure I did. This was the end of the night. The wedding's over.
So how did you get into the building across the street?
Oh, it's not in the building. I'm on the street, across the street.
Oh, so you're on the street?
I'm on the street. Yep.
Shooting up?
Yep.
Okay.
It's on the 3rd story.
Okay.
He's Superman.
Spider-Man.
There you go.
So I have a question. So 2.4, most of our triggers are 2.4. So
Correct.
how did you get the triggers to fire then?
Well, these are not. They're nanos. They shoot at 900 megahertz.
Okay.
Pocket Wizards don't fire at 2.4. Now, within 2.4, there are a lot of, I don't know if I'm saying this right, there's a lot of channels within the frequency. Canon happens to be on the most common one. And this is feedback I've been giving them since they came out. So any wireless network, there's a scan feature on the speed light. So you hit scan, and you'll see your 15 channels, and you'll see them ebb and flow as to what channel is suppressed and which one is stronger, okay? So the whole theory was if you use auto, it'll auto-seek the strongest frequency. Auto does work at times, but if there's too much radio interference, there's too much lag time with auto because the remote light is auto-scanning, your transmitter is auto-scanning, and it doesn't always fire when you want to fire. And I never want that to happen. When I want it to shoot, I want it to shoot. So I understand if it's not properly communicating, I'm going to a standby that I know is rock solid. Now other things, the 2.4 on the B1, they are on a different channel. I've never had any interference with the B1, never, ever. And yet it's at 2.4. But they're at a different frequency within, I don't know, frequency or channel or whatever. There's bandwidth in there. You could buy, like Canon bought that band. And the reason they go with 2.4 is because you could use that universally worldwide. Where Pocket Wizard and Radio Popper, they have frequencies that they have licensed in Europe, in China, in the US. They have an FCC license, right? This is boring shit. It really is boring to read. I'm at night, like reading the white papers on stuff, but that's because I don't want to be limited in any way. If I want to pull something off, I want to make sure it's going to work. You know, Gregory Heisler, he's a colleague of mine. I mean, he does full-on setups in his studio before he goes on location, and he's going to know what's going to work. You know, he was photographing Giuliani on top of the Chrysler building, and he was doing some lighting, and there's just too much RF up there, because he did a test up there, nothing would fire. Nothing at all, because there's all kinds of antennas up there. So he had to hardwire all of his lighting, right? So that means it's just more complicated to run cabling back to the master device when you have lights in various locations. It's old school, but you need to know that. You know.
What was the brand you said you used?
So Radio Popper makes just a simple dumb trigger, the JRX or the Nano. They're pretty inexpensive. There's all kinds of radio triggering devices available now. So you just need to understand what frequency they were on and how they will work. Yeah.
Just wondering, just from a logistical standpoint, when you have multiple shooters at an event, so you're setting up these, you know, lights around the room. What are you doing to ensure that you aren't setting off each other's, that you don't have flashes, you know, just sort of firing into each other's shots?
Different channels.
Sure. So a lot of times we'll have up to 3 photographers at an event, and they're going to shoot in a similar style as me. Everybody's going to light, especially at the reception. So triangle of light. But I'll do a scan when we first walk in, and 99 times out of 100, 13, 14, 15 are the strongest. And if 15 happens to be the strongest, you can put a pin number in. So everybody can be on channel 15, but with a different personal identification number. One thing I've learned with experience is the simpler the number, the easier it is. While they give you 4 digits, it's another step to decode. So if you happen to be and this only applies to if you're in a room with a lot of radio frequency traffic. Most bands today have wireless communication for their mics, their lighting, everything. In fact, the guy out in the middle of the room with his iPad controlling the sound is all at 2.4. So if you do a scan at the beginning of the evening, let's say everything is kaput except for channel 15, well then I'll say, okay, I'll be channel 15, 1000. You're channel 15, 2000. The minute you start making your pin number even more complicated, it's one more step to decode before it will lock in and communicate. Okay? But if you're not in a situation where there's a lot of RF, then you just pick your own channels and go from there. And we don't overpopulate the room with light stands. One light stand, again, I don't want to attract attention, and you have multiple brackets. So we'll go 3. I use a triple threat from Westcott, and you could mount 3 speed lights off of 1 light stand. And no big umbrella, just small, you know.
So you all
Come to Photo World and you'll see a demo of it.
Yeah.
That's where I'm actually going to get into it. Yeah. But it's still, knowing your gear and knowing lighting, I can't stress on enough.
So really yourself was natural shooters.
All right, so let's see. You know, even images like this. The couple had an idea. They wanted to decorate a Christmas tree. This is December, bitterly cold at the lakefront. And they wanted to decorate a Christmas tree on the lakefront. I'm like, oh, this is going to be bitchin', right? I get excited when people have ideas. And I love the beacon going off. on the Palmolive building. So for me, the Christmas lights had to light. So I got a Paul Buff battery. LED Christmas lights light up really easy. They don't draw much voltage. So we went to Home Depot, we bought the lights, we bought the tree, and we bought a bucket, and we met them at North Avenue Beach. One light behind and 2 small light modifiers in the front using Rogue flash benders. No big light modifiers out here because who's going to catch my lights when the wind takes them, right? An umbrella, anything like that is going to go. Small light modifiers, no problem. But it worked out really great. One backlight with them, front light so you could see who the heck they are, and then the actual lights on the tree are illuminated, right? So I'm filtering the speed lights to tungsten because the city lights were tungsten, and then using a Rogue flash bender in the front, and it's way to go. This is a useful tool. Anybody that has the older cameras, I still have a Canon 5D Mark II, works great for me. The 600EX RTs will not give you groups, right? So that's the main sexy feature of the new speed lights, is the ability to put each speed light in an individual group, up to 5 groups, and to control them independently from camera. And what that means is you have A, B, C, D, and E, and you could turn them on, off, manual mode, ETTL mode, whatever you want to do, all right from here. The challenge is the Canon transmitter is not compliant with any camera pre-2012. 5D Mark II, 1D Mark IV. They will fire in all, but it doesn't give you groups. That's just a limitation Canon put in the technology, so you would go and buy a 5D Mark III, right? So this is a Japanese trigger, Yongnuo. Not only that, it has a focus assist beam. Canon's does not. So again, that was one thing, feedback I gave to Canon right off the bat is, you know, my STE3 does not have a focus assist beam. The STE2 does, where this has a focus assist beam, right? See the grid? Little grid pattern. Oh, where are you at? Is it not going on? They turn it off. Let me see what the functions are. Modeling. AF on. Okay.
Maybe there's too much light in here.
It could be. Could be. But there is a focus assist on this, which you can get on the speed lights. No, why aren't you going on?
Don't you hate that when you...
I know, technology, right?
When you don't want them on, they're on.
Oh, wait. Get it back. Are you kidding me? Oh, wait. It is a little persnickety, funky thing. Yep, it is. Yongnuo is pretty funky, but it will work. I don't know why it's not emitting. It was earlier. But yeah, it's an alternative to the Canon one that'll give you groups with your older cameras. I just updated the firmware on it today, and I didn't go back and reset all my set. Oh, wait, it's in Legacy. It says right on the top, sorry. I gotta turn Legacy off.
Their flashes, I love their flashes.
I like how
So Legacy, I have a Fuji. I love the X100. I still have the original X100. So I'll use this with my Canon speed lights in manual mode. And if you put it in Legacy mode, it'll work on the Fuji.
legacy mode.
Yeah. So now it'll work, right?
We believe you, though.
Okay. Oh, there it is. Yeah. I had to take it out of Legacy, right? Yep. And you see the grid, right? Where Canon's does not have a focus assist beam, the STE3, and it's not backwards compatible on older cameras. One other thing is if you have a Canon device on and this, the Canon, it's always going to gravitate toward the Canon, so you might have to turn this trigger off sometimes, or turn the Canon one off to get it to sync, right? So, yeah, it was just, hold the mic. I was walking around New Orleans last weekend, and there's a lot of freaking strange people there, man. There is a lot of strange people, right? Yeah, and so I was just doing a lot of lighting like this. Oh, let me turn it on. Link up. I had this all set up for the Fuji.
You really like that camera, huh?
I do. It's fun.
Is that with the leaf shutter?
Yeah, with the leaf shutter, there's no worry about sync. So you could shoot at 1,000th of a second and get it all to fire. Why aren't you linking?
Who's
No
got the
link.
Nikon camera that works?
No, it's me messing with this. I just before I came out, I updated the firmware because they changed something in the firmware. There we go. Right?
Beautiful.
Yeah. And I didn't reset everything back because you could set your custom function settings. But now it's backwards compatible with this device with all your older cameras, or even this would work on a Nikon. And you could control Canon speed lights with a Nikon, right? So it's another useful tool, but it does limited range.
Bob, what model is that?
That's the Young Neo YN E3 RT.
Well, I like that this got more channels than the Canon. I mean the Nikon. This one's got E, A, B, C, D.
Groups. Well, essentially, Nikon has always had 4. Master, A, B, C, right? Canon does not separate master. So it's confusing. Even with the old system, if you read the manual, you're like, what the hell is my master flash doing? You don't know because it's not designated master. So the on-camera or master speed light is always in group A. You know, and that's not something that they articulate clear enough.
Maybe that's why you always shoot in group A. I think I was talking to that guy over there. Yeah.
I don't have any of my off lights in group A.
Okay.
They'll always be B, C, D, or E, because if I add an on-camera fill flash, it's in A, and if I want it to be different from anything else, it has to be in a different group.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where Nikon, it's master, A, B, C.
So
Big
you're
difference.
not crazy. Okay.
I'm not. Just a little. Just a little. I mean, just fun stuff like this. We were shooting in the green mill. Again, I love couples that collaborate. They wanted to have this whole Mad Men type of cocktails and
Broadway.
clothing, right? Yep, right off Broadway. So I wanted that feeling like the bright light coming in. You know, you've been there too late, been out drinking all night. But it was a cloudy day, so there was no light coming in from the front window to create some specularity. So just pop a flash up there, manual mode, and get a little lens flare. So again, it's just understanding your light and what you want to do to manipulate it. You know, take the lens hood off, boom, let it skim right across the front. You know, little fill with a reflector. I just popped up the reflector and propped it against the wall, and you get a nice image, you know. It's really a challenging place to shoot in because it's super dark, funky color.
I like that.
Lots of mirrors.
It's fun. But I like the challenge. Backlightaholic for sure. This is in Italy. We were at a castle doing their lifestyle engagement session. And when I shot it without the rim light behind him, and they just, because it was a dark environment, dark space in there, her hair just kind of, it went dead for me. So wait a second, you know, 2 seconds. Scusi, per favore. Uno luminare. You know, I threw a light in the background, and it made a big difference, right? See, without any light under the arches, it's completely dark. You wouldn't think to light this, but yes, it is. It was so extremely backlit by the sun, I needed some front fill. So there, I'm off to the side, and I have 2 speed lights on one light stand acting as one, high speed sync, and as they're, you know, running up the path, it'll keep up high speed sync, right? Nikons, Canons, they all do that. The only thing is I'm not limited to line of sight for communication because I'm using, this is the 600s. Boom, firing every time. Give you a nice fill. My window's my main light. A speed light was off camera. This is in an old clock tower, and they had one of the big gears to turn the clock. So other than just having a plain wall, I use it as a cookie.
Where is it at?
Where's what?
The clock tower?
Where's the clock tower? It's in Sismano, Italy.
That's a long way.
Yeah, it's great. It's worth the journey, though.
We're taking field trips, CPS field.
But the whole idea is to create a light pattern on the wall. So just put the flash through the gear, and it just makes it a little bit more interesting. The main light on them is the window.
Clock tower gobo.
Yep, you got it. Cookie, actually. A gobo blocks light. I can't say the word. Yeah, that's it. A cookie.
Cucaloras and quinoflora.
Yep.
You know, Cucaloras is old school.
I'm old school, man. So very simple, daylight through the window and filtering the flash through the light. I get a lot of inspiration from movies, right? So put the light in the car, turn the headlights on, have them drive towards you. I'm in a van shooting again from the back. But they're lit, because if I didn't have a speed light duct taped to the dashboard, lighting them up, you'd have overhead lighting from the sunroof, and you wouldn't see any facial features. So speed light in the car, work great. Try and do that a lot. Just natural light going back in
Hey,
with
Bob,
a reflector.
I have a question here.
Yeah,
In the car scene,
yeah.
hello everyone. In that car scene,
Mhm.
are you diffusing the light, or is it point directly?
No, it's pointed directly at him. It's one lonely little speed light, and it's got a lot to compete with, all the existing ambient light, so it's trying to get the most energy out of it as possible. Yeah. I have no idea. It was ETTL. I'm worried about not falling out of the van. Them Italian drivers are crazy. I'm back there like, Nate, come on, take it easy, you know, with the 70 to 200. And I'm like, dude, we don't need Mario Andretti on the van. Diffusing the light. So I love shooting in environments like this. But if you've ever done it, the sunlight coming through the leaves is very harsh and dappled. So I have a 7-foot umbrella that I take with me a lot of times. It's translucent. So I forced it up into the tree above them, and so the light that's coming onto them is just beautiful open light. Here you could start to see the dappling, but that's just diffusing the natural light that was coming through to even it all out, right? So we don't have the hot spots. So it's just about light. This is where I got the first inspiration for slaving other people's lights. So this is last year. We get crazy brides that volunteer and want to do this, turn their wedding into a real wedding workshop. We have one coming up in January at the Ritz-Carlton in Florida, and then another one the following September in Maryland. But anyways, his mom is a wedding photographer. So she said, hey, let's do this. So we had 15 photographers as my second shooters. Yep, define everybody's role. So mom rented out the American Theater in South Carolina. That's Charleston, South Carolina. That's a movie theater where The Notebook was filmed. So she had all their engagement photos up in the marquee. They had their name in the marquee, and they had a red carpet. I'm like, oh, I want to do the red carpet, the paparazzi, everything. So I slaved everybody's camera to mine so that they would hopefully, most of them fired when I fired. So they were just put in manual mode, I think like 1/64th power, and we shot away. And they had so much fun doing this that all the guests walked it twice. So there's like 80 guests that walked down the red carpet twice. I mean, we were having fun with them. I was telling the photographers, Catcom, what are you wearing? Where'd you meet? I heard you're having an affair. You know, we made this whole thing really fun. Yeah, all those things to try and get these reactions from people. It was fun. This is just a straight up backlight, no front fill at all. And this was actually timed because it's very busy. It's like a cruising street in South Carolina. So I had determined my settings ahead of time. They came out, we popped it down, gelled it to tungsten, couple frames, and we couldn't hold up traffic anymore. So the ambient light was the marquee, was nighttime, and a gel to color match.
Do you generally have your zoom in on your flash when you're backlighting?
It depends where it's at and what effect I want it to be. So if I want it more of a spotlight from here up, I'll go to 200 millimeters. Generally, it starts off at 50, and we go from there.
When you do the triangle of light bulb, you keep it zoomed all the way out because you're lighting it.
Well, when I'm doing the triangle of light, there's a purpose for what we're doing. So what we would do is have one light. If this is my venue, and I've used it for press conferences, I've used it outside for family sessions of kids because they move around a lot. I've used it. There isn't a time I haven't used it. Let's put it that way. I mainly started refining it for receptions because I don't like the look of on-camera flash. But I will use on-camera flash in conjunction with off, and then you make the off-camera lights your main and your on-camera a fill. So I start, if this is the venue, that's the stage where the band would be. I would have one light left, right, and one in the back of the room. So I start off Group B, Group C, Group D, so that I can individually control them at any point in time, which I do. If I turn and start shooting this way, I may have to start changing the power. But they'll start off at 35 millimeters on the front for the spread of light, and 50 in the back. So the reason being is 50 is just going to be a hair light. Just needed to get a little separation in the background, right?
On the remote, you can change the dimension, or whatever you call it, from a 35 to a zoom.
Oh, here. I don't know why I'm doing that. We can just go.
I thought you could only change the power.
So, whoop, 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 whoop. Too fast, too fast. Slow down.
That's cool.
So, I mean, I love that image. So I'm shooting up in the technical loft with a 300, and our second shooter's down on the floor. And it's nice to shoot the horror from down on the floor, but you're always looking up, and a lot of times it's not the most flattering angle, right? Either you're looking up at a woman, nobody really likes to see under here. Sometimes you see up their dress. I mean, you know, you catch as catch can. So I really like when I have the ability to go up and shoot from above, because it just cleans everything up. So this is the triangle of light. See the highlights on her left side, right side. So there's a light over here on stage. There's a light over here on stage, right next to their speakers with light modifiers on them, and a light in the back of the room, which is just a few feet away from me. But look at the sparkle. Look at that image. One on-camera bounce flash does not hold a candle to that. The depth, the dimension. And I'm not looking for applause. I'm just saying you got to see light, right? If you look at old black and white pictures when they had to light, because they're shooting 4x5, you had to light, because film was so slow, and you had to shoot everything at f8. That's where the expression f8 and be there came from, because they would zone focus everything with a flash bulb. They didn't focus. Everything was in focus from 3 feet to infinity with a press camera, and boom, you just bathe them in light. But if they were doing anything like this, if you look at Yeah. I'm trying to think of his name right off the top of my head. He's done all these great off-camera flashlights. No. Years ago, 4x5. So it's a famous picture of a couple at a drive-in movie theater, and there's a steam engine going through the background. They're making out in a convertible 57 Chevy. Oh, I can't.
Go Winston Link.
Yes. Oh, Winston Link. So he would hardwire with a 4x5 all these flash bulbs, one shot, baby, and he'd nail it. In fact, he did the first radio trigger. He photographed an aircraft carrier from an airplane with a speed graphic, and he wrung the deck of the aircraft carrier in flash bulbs, right? That's bitching, man. So if you think what we could do now, it's a piece of cake, okay, when you think of what they were doing then. And I draw a lot of inspiration.
He had a measure on it.
Yeah.
There was no flash meter.
No, you knew if a number 12 bulb, it was going to be f8, right?
Oh, yeah.
No, I mean, you just...
No, a number 12 would be.
Yeah, right. So you knew this stuff ahead of time. And today, the technology we have, there is no excuse for bad pictures. There's no excuse for bad lighting. But everybody is falling in love with the high ISO. I don't need the light. All my buddies in New York, they're shooting 50 millimeter 1.2, 85, 24s, 6400 ISO, and like, look at my pictures. I'm like, I'll put mine next to yours, and we'll see which one the bride likes. It's not about me as a photographer, what I like. It is partially, you got to be creatively satisfied as well. But then you also have to realize we are in the service industry and we are being trusted to capture someone's most important memories. And this isn't something to do just for extra money. Weddings are too hard. They really are. They're the hardest thing ever to photograph.
You could see like her tiara sparkle.
Yeah, and this isn't much depth of field. This is only f4. But because you're lighting and it's 1250 at least ISO, your recycle time is going to be fast, and the images are so clean as long as you're lighting it, it just sings. The images just sing. The receptions, I mean, they're just amazing. So, bounce flash or this. I mean, even if I'm down in the mosh pit, like these, you could see the backlights going off. So since I turned and I'm shooting into my lights, I go BC, you're at manual mode now, quarter power. Just so I'm not shooting into a cave of darkness. You could see how dark it is here. But by having these lights, we have highlight here, we have sparkle on the table, him and his grandma. Sure, I have an on-camera fill flash. And that's in Group A.
Are you using a dome on your speed light?
Yes.
Yes.
A Stoffen dome, just because it's small.
Yeah.
And it just softens it. And it's direct. I don't care that I don't have to bounce my on-camera flash because I got 3 other lights going off.
That little, or that box.
Right. So there's a lot of fill going on. It's all the lights playing together. See, you wouldn't have this with any bounce flash. Look at the sparkle. Look at the rim lighting on her. Look at how the chandelier is lit. Right? Look at the hand light here. Okay? The on-camera flash is lighting them for sure. But B and C are doing everything else.
You're pointing it too.
Yeah, they're direct. They're direct.
It's not up with
No.
it's direct right on.
I don't want soft light.
Right.
Right?
I see that.
If I'm going to point everything up at the ceiling, I might as well use the umbrellas.
Well, I meant up with the
Yeah, I know. Sure.
So, but this is
By going direct,
Yeah.
I don't have a recycle issue. I have highlight, I have shadow, and I have control over the output from my master device, be it a speed light or a speed light transmitter.
And you can shoot vertical or horizontal.
Correct. I don't like a bracket, so I mean, as little stuff as I can have, I want. That's why more often than not, I'm shooting with the speed light transmitter and not a speed light on the camera. But you have to recognize when you're walking around the dance floor, yes, you need an on-camera flash for that wide camera because you're going to be in a situation like these. Both grandma and the bride would have a cross shadow going across her face, so you need that front fill. And I've practiced this at home, in my living room, everywhere.
For your reception, are you at 1250 for most of the reception?
Depends on the environment, but this is a big room. This is 2 stories tall, about 60 feet wide, and about 200 feet deep, 150 feet deep. So yeah, 1250, easily.
No problem with noise at all.
If you expose, you don't have that problem.
Depends on the camera. Yes, full frame sensor.
The new 7D is pretty exciting.
It is.
Let's see.
Did you say your main camera is still a 5D too?
Oh no. My main camera at an event is a 1DX.
Okay.
I shoot 2 1DX. What's this one? So let's see here. So this is 3200 ISO. Okay. It's not unacceptable, is it? Yeah. I mean, as long as you have detail in your shadows, it's totally fine by me. Like I said, I've shot film. So I couldn't do half the stuff I do shooting with film. Because who's going to push it that far? 32, 64, I mean, it's just so liberating. And then I have complete control over the color. And I'm not knocking film. I think there's a time and a place for it. Weddings, I don't see it. Like I said before, back up on my soapbox, if you're going to make a print from a negative, it has a whole different look and feel than if you're just going to scan it and put it in the computer and print from Photoshop anyways. Any of those looks you can create through a plugin, right? Not have to deal with any dust, anything like that. One thing I'd like to say again about books, take a look. I brought some Graphy Studio examples. I think we're doing ourselves a disservice as photographers if you let your client dictate to you the output, and I'll tell you why. You need to educate your client constantly, right? And this is another thing that I kind of get on a soapbox about, is digital is fleeting. And what I mean by that is a lot of people take pictures with this device. Nothing wrong with that. They download it to their computer, if they download it and back it up and sync it. My niece wants to get the iPhone 6, and she's so panicked because she hasn't backed up her phone in so long, and then it's a big mess now for her to try and get her images out of it. The only ones that she's been able to get are the few she's posted on Facebook, right? But what happens when Facebook changes, like MySpace did? Your memories are fleeting, they're gone. So if you don't routinely archive and back up and progress the technology, optical discs are on their way out, CDs, DVDs. If you don't migrate that data to something else, or all the new laptops are coming without optical drives. So what are you going to do to that person who has a CD? So I mean, digital is fleeting. If you provide them an output, a fine art print, a book, people will treasure that. Everybody knows where that shoebox of photos are in their home, right? Not everybody. I have family that, oh, I took these great pictures of Lukey's 6-year-old birthday party on that digital camera that I no longer have. And now they have a new computer. They don't migrate their data. They get a new computer every 3 to 5 years, so their memories are gone.
Do you have any thoughts about DNG files? Matter? Is it ever cool or not worth it to you?
I don't use it.
Migrating forward, like keeping the file?
Yeah, DNG is another proprietary thing. Who knows if everybody's going to embrace it? All those things are changing, so you'd have to keep a software that could read it. I like the idea behind it, definitely, that it'll be universal. But a TIFF and a JPEG is going to be here, because it's been here since the beginning, and I don't see it going anywhere.
Right. I just wanted to know, the Library of Congress is tilted towards DNG.
Sure.
And TIFF and JPEG.
Sure.
They had a whole series of guys researching this and kind of
yeah, digital asset management still really is a conundrum. You know, having things backed up, having things redundant. As much of a pain in the ass as it is, in many ways it's more reliable than film, because if you didn't wash your negatives properly, color negatives especially would deteriorate a whole lot quicker than black and white. Chromes will fade, you know, if you don't properly store and archive them as well. Everything has a limit to it. But the output, a print, pretty much will last because people will take care of it, you know. Yeah, and most all printers nowadays have archival inks and papers. So whatever you even output at home, most all of them are 100 years now, where that's even better than chemical prints from a few years back. You know.
And the light's too long, it starts to fade.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the colors start to shift.
It's true.
Because the chemicals are technically still active.
They are. They are.
My favorite quote is, don't let your kids grow up to be JPEGs.
It's true. No, it's great. It's true. It's true. And I'm partially guilty of that because I constantly document our family and constantly taking photos, but I don't print out as much as I should. I mean, I do, but you know, just the other day I was spinning up old hard drives, because you have to spin them up too as you archive them, because if they stay dormant too long, they'll freeze up. So every 3 to 6 months, I'll spin up hard drives. And I was going through and I found some images from 2010. It was a fun 4th of July weekend that I had done nothing with. So I made a small iPhoto book and a slideshow from it, and everybody was like, oh my God, that was so fun. You know, exactly to that point.
It's 9 o'clock.
Sure.
Maybe
yeah, no, I'll take any questions. I'm good to go. Yeah.
I'm going to back you up.
Sure.
Maybe you were behind me. I couldn't quite hear it. If I'm the only one that didn't understand where you were going, I apologize. Go back to when you're talking about using your manufacturer software.
Sure.
You were talking about taking the raw image, going back to their software and doing, you were just getting I mean, you said you were transferring it to a JPEG, then go take it
No.
to Lightroom?
No. So,
like
sure.
I said, I couldn't quite hear you, so I didn't follow.
Cameras
the process.
today will shoot at crazy high ISOs, right? My kind of rule of break, which I found is working for me, is anything above 2500 ISO, I will take not the entire shoot, but a particular few of images that are going to be, we'll call them a marquee image.
Right.
And I will raw decode them and process them in DPP. Because it's not interpolating or guessing at anything, it is the manufacturer which has the proper recipe. So even if you're shooting Nikon, Sony, whatever, there's a breaking point to where at higher ISOs, Lightroom and Apple do not get to decode perfect. So if you take those few images and turn it to a TIFF or a DNG, whatever output you want to have from the manufacturer's software, then bring it back into...
Taking the TIFF back.
Yep, the TIFF or the
The
DNG.
raw file, shoot like a TIFF.
Not just convert it, but you're going to adjust your highlights, your shadows, your contrast, all that in its proper software because it has the perfect recipe
It's like the
for
mother
that.
and father of that.
How
It
big
is.
are those TIFF files?
I'm sorry?
How big are those TIFF files?
Pretty big.
16?
85 meg.
Oh, 125. Most of the time they're 125. And if you don't like that, you don't have to go TIFF. You could go JPEG, whatever you want. You know what I mean? That's up to you. But I know I make them a TIFF because that's going to go to my archive then from there, and I don't want to have to worry about it. That's just me.
At the high ISO and meet mark.
Correct.
So if you've got something we have more control, better light, and you're shooting at say 400.
Oh no, I'll use Lightroom and all that. My breaking point is 25.
I'm sorry to cut this off, but we gotta finish up and people need to get out of here. Hey, I encourage you to.
You're welcome.
I'm sure Bob will.
Thank you.
A couple of items. There's a computer set up back there. If you want to sign up, get